All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling a pretty prestigious gig, becoming an ambassador.
Oh, yeah, fascinating stuff.
Totally. We've got RoleCatcher's career and interview guides to guide us. We'll even see how their platform can, give you a leg up. I mean, who hasn't thought about, those embassy parties
Right?
or, negotiating some high-stakes global agreement?
Yeah, definitely has that appeal.
But before we go full glamour mode, let's get real. What does an ambassador actually do day to day?
So you're basically your country's representative in another country. The career guide breaks down some key things, like you're promoting your nation's interests, building relationships with foreign governments, and negotiating all sorts of things, from trade deals to security stuff.
Okay, so big responsibility.
Yeah. You're also protecting your citizens abroad, keeping those communication lines open between countries, and maybe most important, you're advising your home government on everything about that host country.
Got it. A lot on your plate. But let's get to the heart of this deep dive. How do you actually get one of these jobs? What kind of questions should you be ready for in the interview?
Well, RoleCatcher's interview guide has some great sample questions, things you're likely to encounter.
Perfect. Let's hear 'em.
First up, a classic. What inspired you to pursue a career as an ambassador?
Sounds simple, but I bet it's trickier than just saying, I love to travel.
You're right, they want to see real passion. Are you actually cut out for this demanding job? It's about showing deep interest in diplomacy, international relations, a real desire to contribute globally.
Okay, so how do you approach it? Just list off a bunch of reasons.
Not quite. Instead of a list, think about a story, something compelling, an experience that sparked your interest. Did you live abroad and that changed you? Were you fascinated by some historical event? Or maybe some specific ambassador's legacy? Make it personal, make it real, connected to why you want to serve as an ambassador.
That's good. So it's showing this isn't just a whim, but like a deep passion. Any things you should avoid saying.
Definitely. Steer clear of generic stuff, like it's prestigious or I like to travel. That doesn't tell them anything unique about you or why you're truly committed. You want to show your individuality, your specific motivation.
Got it. I'm already thinking how I'd answer that one. What's next?
Question 2. It's about staying informed. How do you stay up to date on current events and trends in international relations?
So are you a news junkie or just skimming headlines?
Exactly. They want to see you're engaged with the global landscape. It's always changing. You have to be informed, insightful, able to analyze things, give good advice. That's diplomacy.
Right. So rattle off all the news sources I follow.
Mentioning sources is good, but go beyond just news outlets. Think about respected journals, think tanks, even cultural publications. What's more important is how you use that info, how you filter and analyze it.
Interesting. So knowing facts isn't enough. You need to show critical thinking too.
Exactly. Can you separate reliable sources from biased ones? Connect things that seem unrelated? Form your own opinions based on facts? That's what they want to see.
Okay, so I'm a trusted advisor, someone who gets the big picture. What should I not say?
Avoid just relying on social media or personal opinions. Your view of international relations should be from credible sources and, well-reasoned analysis.
Makes sense. Feeling the pressure already. What other tough ones should I expect?
Question 3 gets into a big skill for diplomats. How do you approach building relationships with foreign governments and stakeholders?
Yeah, that's crucial. What are they getting at with this one?
It's all about your people skills, strategic thinking, cultural sensitivity. They want to know you get the complexities.
Yeah.
Navigating different cultures and political landscapes, it's not simple.
Right. It's more than just being charming. You need a strategy.
For sure. Explain how you research and figure out the key players in a situation. How do you build that rapport, that trust, especially with people from all different backgrounds?
So finding that balance between respect for cultures and, smart relationship building.
Exactly. And don't fall into the trap of giving a one-size-fits-all answer. Building a relationship with, say, someone from Japan is going to be very different from someone from Argentina.
Right. Each culture is unique. I wouldn't want to mess that up right in the interview.
Definitely not.
Okay, what's next to test my diplomacy skills?
Question 4 tackles conflict. How do you handle disagreements or conflicts with foreign governments or stakeholders?
Ooh, that's a tough one. International stuff rarely goes perfectly smoothly, right?
Definitely not. They're checking your conflict resolution skills. Can you stay calm under pressure? Find constructive solutions, but without ruining relationships.
So how do I show them I can do that?
Talk about your process. Do you listen actively? Try to understand the other side. Are you willing to compromise? And the key is Back it up with an example.
A story about a time I handled a tricky situation.
Yeah, choose something where there was a genuine disagreement. Explain how you use diplomacy, good communications, strategic thinking to get to a solution everyone could live with.
So I'm the problem solver, the bridge builder. What should I avoid saying here?
Don't go for overly simplistic solutions, no aggressive language, and definitely don't blame others for the conflict. Remember, diplomacy is about finding common ground, not making things worse.
Right, cool heads prevail. This is making a lot of sense. What's next?
Number 5, all about communication. How do you ensure effective communication between your country and foreign governments or stakeholders?
Communication's key in any job, but wow, especially in this one. What are they really after here?
They're looking at how organized you are, your leadership, how you adjust your communication to different people and cultures, and if you understand all those different communication tools and strategies out there.
That's a lot. So how should I approach it?
Be structured, be specific. Explain your process for setting goals, figuring out the best ways to communicate, and then how you check if it's actually working.
So it's not just talking. It's about having a whole communication plan.
Exactly. And like before, use a real-world example. Maybe you led a successful public diplomacy campaign, or maybe you had to navigate a really sensitive issue with another government.
So I need to show I can get the message across clearly and effectively to anyone. What are some mistakes to watch out for?
Avoid vague answers or getting too complex. No jargon. Keep it clear. And always think about the culture and language of who you're talking to.
Right. Don't get lost in translation. What else should I get ready for?
Question 6 gets into a tough one. How do you balance your country's interests with international obligations and ethical considerations?
That balancing act. Your country versus the world. This is getting to the heart of what a diplomat is, isn't it?
It is. It's about your strategic thinking, your decision-making, and your morals. They want to know if you can stand up for your country while also dealing with complex international agreements and ethical dilemmas.
Okay, deep stuff. How do I even begin to answer something like that?
Lay out how you handle ethical problems. What are your principles? Where do you go for guidance? How do you weigh different interests and values?
Lots to think about there. Any examples I could use to show them how I do it?
Think of a time you had to balance your own values with what you had to do for work. Or maybe you had to make a tough choice with good and bad consequences. Explain what factors you thought about, how you made the decision, and what the outcome was.
So I'm showing my integrity, my ability to make tough calls. What should I avoid in this answer?
Don't give simplistic answers or try to dodge the question. Ethical dilemmas are complex. Don't pretend they're easy. They want someone who gets the challenges and can explain their approach.
Honesty is key then. This is really showing me how much goes into being an ambassador. What else do I need to be ready for?
Question 7 focuses on inclusion. How do you build and maintain a diverse and inclusive workplace culture in your embassy?
Super important, especially when you're working with people from everywhere. What's the key takeaway they're looking for here?
It's about your leadership and management, sure, but even more, it's about how much you actually care about diversity and inclusion. Not just saying the right words, but taking action. Can you create a welcoming place for everyone?
Walking the walk. Okay, so how do I show them that commitment?
Be specific. What actions would you take to build that environment? Diverse hiring. Cultural sensitivity training for staff, creating space for open conversations and feedback. Explain your strategy and give concrete examples of things you've done or would do.
Building that culture of respect where everyone's heard. What are some traps to avoid with this one?
Don't be generic or sound fake. Don't just use buzzwords. You need to show a real understanding. And be sure to talk about systemic bias, the need to actually address it.
Right, important stuff. I'm really getting a good sense of the kind of leader they want. What's next on the grilling list?
Question 8 digs into politics. How do you navigate the intersection of politics and diplomacy in your role as an ambassador?
Interesting. Diplomacy can be a tricky dance when politics get heated.
Exactly. They're testing your political smarts. Can you represent your country while staying impartial and without breaking international rules?
They're being savvy, but tactful. How do I even approach that?
Explain how you balance political stuff with diplomatic goals. How would you engage with politicians? How would you manage those touchy subjects that could make things tense between countries?
Sounds like juggling with, like, fire. Any real-world examples that would work here?
Think of a time you had to deal with a politically charged situation. Maybe you worked with people who had totally opposite views. Explain how you used your communication, your understanding of how politics work, and your commitment to diplomacy to get everyone moving forward.
So I'm showing I can stay cool and find that middle ground, even when things are tense. What should I not do with this question?
Avoid giving answers that lean towards a specific political party or ideology. Remember, you represent the whole country. And of course, be ethical. Don't compromise your values just to score political points.
Diplomacy is about building bridges, not burning them down. Okay, last one. What have we got?
The ninth and final question. How do you leverage technology and innovation in your diplomatic efforts?
Now that's an interesting one. I bet tech is more and more important in all this, right?
Absolutely. They want to see if you can adapt to new technology and use it effectively to achieve your goals.
So it's not about just knowing tech, but knowing how it helps diplomacy.
Exactly. Explain how you go about finding and implementing new technologies. What are your criteria for choosing? How do you make sure it's being used ethically and responsibly?
Okay, so tech knowledge, strategy, and ethics. Any examples I can use to illustrate this?
Think about a time you successfully used new tech at work. Maybe you used social media to reach a bigger audience, or started using new communication tools for better collaboration. Explain the problems you faced, the solutions you came up with, and the good results you achieved.
So I'm the forward-thinking diplomat, using tech to my advantage. What are the pitfalls with this answer?
Don't get too technical or focus on how new and shiny the tech is. Remember, technology is a tool to achieve a goal. It's not the goal itself.
Good point. It's about using it smartly and thoughtfully. I'm feeling a lot more ready for this interview now. We've gone through all 9 sample questions, but both the career guide and interview guide list the exact same ones. Is there anything else we should know about these specific questions?
Well, it's interesting that the questions are the same, but the context is a bit different. The career guide is a quick preview, but the interview guide goes deeper. It gives you more insight into what they're really looking for, and even some sample responses.
So it's like 2 levels of prep. One is the overview, the other helps you refine your answers.
Exactly. Let's revisit a few of the questions and see how those insights can make your answers even better. For example, let's go back to question number 3, about building relationships.
The one about foreign governments and stakeholders. Hit me.
The interview guide really emphasizes showing cultural sensitivity and strategic thinking. It suggests talking about how you research and identify key players, and your tactics for establishing rapport and building trust.
Okay, so it's showing I'm not going to walk in and try to charm everyone with the same approach. Thought and preparation are key.
Exactly. And remember, avoid being arrogant or dismissive of other cultures. Diplomacy is about building bridges, not walls.
Great point. Are there any other questions where the interview guide is especially helpful?
Let's look at question 4, the one about handling conflicts.
Ah, yes. Conflict resolution. Time to show off my negotiating skills.
The interview guide stresses emotional intelligence in this answer. It suggests highlighting active listening, empathy, and a willingness to compromise.
So it's not about winning, but finding a solution that works for everyone.
Precisely. And remember, always use a real-world example to back up your approach.
That makes sense. Stories are always more memorable than just talking about concepts.
Absolutely. And the interview guide gives some helpful advice on what not to say in your answer.
Like what?
It cautions against simplistic or aggressive answers, or blaming others for the conflict. Remember, diplomacy is about finding common ground, not escalating tensions.
Right, de-escalation, finding that win-win. I'm seeing how the interview guide really takes your answers up a notch.
Exactly. It gives you those extra layers of insight that can make a good answer great.
This is incredibly helpful. I'm feeling much more prepared for those tough questions. But before we move on, is there anything else about these 9 questions that we should be aware of?
Well, what's interesting is that these questions actually assess a bunch of different skills and qualities that are essential for an ambassador.
So it's not just about testing my knowledge of international relations.
Exactly. They're also looking at your communication skills, your problem-solving abilities, your leadership potential, your cultural sensitivity, your ethical compass, your adaptability.
Wow, that's a lot to pack into 9 questions.
It is, but that's what makes these questions so valuable. They give the interviewers a really holistic view of your capabilities as a potential diplomat.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the world of ambassador interviews. We've covered so much, from figuring out what they're looking for to crafting winning answers. But besides acing those interview questions, what else do I need to know to actually land this job? I mean, is there anything that can give you an edge in such a crazy competitive field?
You're right. It's incredibly competitive, and it takes more than just interview skills. You need to show real commitment to the field through actual experience.
Okay, so what kind of experience should I be focusing on?
The career guide talks about getting hands-on experience in diplomacy and international relations. Think internships at embassies, government agencies, international organizations.
Those sound like great opportunities, but are there any options for someone earlier in their career?
Absolutely. Even if you're not in college yet, participating in Model UN or similar simulations can be incredibly valuable. It's a fantastic way to learn about how diplomacy works, practice those negotiation skills, and get exposed to all sorts of global issues.
That's a great tip. I wish I had known about Model UN when I was younger. It sounds like a really fun and engaging way to learn about diplomacy.
It is, and it shows potential employers that you've taken the initiative to gain relevant experience outside of the classroom.
Okay, so experience is key. What else should I be thinking about as I prepare for this career path?
It's important to understand how the role of an ambassador changes over time. RoleCatcher outlines 3 career stages: entry-level, junior, and senior ambassador.
So as you climb the diplomatic ladder, the responsibilities and expectations change. Tell me more about those different stages.
At the entry level, you're mainly assisting those senior ambassadors, doing research, coordinating things, and getting that valuable experience in the day-to-day of an embassy.
Sounds like a great way to learn the ropes and build a solid foundation. What about the junior ambassador stage?
As a junior ambassador, you'll have more responsibility. You'll be more involved in representing your country, building those relationships with foreign officials, analyzing political situations, giving advice on foreign policy. You might even be drafting reports and attending all those diplomatic events.
Okay, so a step up in responsibility and visibility. What's it like at the senior ambassador level?
At the senior level, you're leading those missions, shaping foreign policy, representing your country at the highest levels, mentoring junior staff. It's the top.
Wow, that's a pretty impressive career trajectory. Sounds like there are lots of opportunities for growth and advancement in this field.
Absolutely. And it's not just about climbing the ladder in an embassy. You might move into senior advisory roles within your government or even work in international development or trade.
So many options. But let's be honest, it all sounds incredibly demanding. What are some of the realities of this job that I should be aware of?
Well, RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat things. In their pros and cons section, they highlight the exciting parts like international travel and immersing yourself in different cultures, but they also talk about the challenges.
Okay, lay it on me. What are the downsides?
Be prepared for high stress, moving around a lot, long hours, and, sometimes dealing with bureaucracy.
Those are some serious considerations. But it's important to be realistic, right? No job is perfect.
Exactly. Going into this with your eyes open is key.
Okay, I've got the interview tips, the career insights, and a dose of reality. But let's be real. Applying for jobs online can feel like shouting into the void. Is there any way to actually stand out from the crowd and get noticed, especially for a prestigious role like this?
That's a great question, and it's where RoleCatcher's platform can really shine. It's like having a secret weapon in your job search arsenal.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about how RoleCatcher can help me land that ambassador role.
In today's world, a lot of companies use those automated recruiters. They use algorithms to scan through tons of applications, looking for specific keywords and skills.
So it's not just about having a beautifully written CV anymore.
It's still important, but it's not enough. Your CV needs to be tailored to what each job requires.
That sounds incredibly time-consuming. How can RoleCatcher help with that?
Their AI-powered CV builder can analyze job descriptions and figure out the exact skills and experiences that employers are looking for. Then it helps you make your CV match those requirements.
Wow, so it's like having a personal career coach who speaks fluent algorithm.
Exactly. It really increases your chances of getting past that initial screening and having a human actually look at your application.
That's a game changer. What else does RoleCatcher offer that can help me prepare for this interview?
Their database of interview questions is huge. It has over 120,000 questions covering all sorts of jobs and skills, including diplomacy and international relations.
120,000 questions. That's a lot at interview prep. How do I even begin to navigate that?
RoleCatcher's platform helps you narrow it down based on the job you want. You can practice answering, get feedback from their AI, even record yourself to see how you come across.
Okay, so it's like having a mock interview with an AI expert who gives me personalized feedback.
Exactly, and it doesn't stop there.
What else can RoleCatcher do? Tell me everything.
They have a library of over 3,000 career guides with detailed info about all sorts of professions.
Wow, so I can really deep dive into diplomacy and learn everything I need to know.
Absolutely. And their employer database, with over 9 million records, lets you research potential employers, figure out their missions, values, culture.
So RoleCatcher is like a one-stop shop for anyone serious about this ambassador thing. I'm feeling a lot more confident about this interview now. But before we wrap up this section, is there one key takeaway I should remember as I start this diplomatic journey?
The best ambassadors are lifelong learners. The world's always changing, so stay curious, adaptable, and open to new perspectives.
That's fantastic advice. So it's not just knowing the facts, but being able to navigate a world that's constantly in flux.
Exactly.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the world of ambassadors. We've covered so much from understanding the role to acing the interview and using the power of platforms like RoleCatcher. You've given me a lot to think about.
You're well on your way to preparing for this exciting career.
I'm feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. But before we completely wrap up, I want to go back and talk about how to really weave together a compelling narrative in the interview. Because we talked about all these different questions, but it's really about presenting a cohesive picture of yourself.
Right. You're hitting on a really important point. It's not enough to just answer the questions. You need to connect the dots and tell a compelling story about your qualifications and your passion for diplomacy.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me how to create that narrative. Where do I even begin?
Let's start by looking at the key themes that emerge from those 9 interview questions. We've already touched on some of them: communication, relationship building, conflict resolution, cultural sensitivity, ethical decision-making, and adaptability.
Okay, those are all essential skills for an ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I make sure those themes shine through in my answers?
It's about being strategic and intentional in your responses. For example, when you're talking about what inspired you to pursue this career, don't just focus on your passion for international relations.
What else should I highlight?
Connect it to your communication skills. Maybe you were drawn to diplomacy because you believe in the power of dialogue to resolve conflicts and build bridges between cultures.
So I'm subtly demonstrating my understanding of the importance of communication in diplomacy.
Exactly. And when you're discussing how you stay up to date on current events, don't just list off your news sources.
What else should I be doing?
Emphasize your analytical skills and your ability to discern credible information from biased sources. Those are crucial skills for an ambassador who needs to provide accurate and insightful advice to their government.
Okay, so I'm showcasing my ability to be a trusted advisor, not just a news consumer. I'm starting to see how this all connects.
It's like a puzzle where each piece contributes to the overall image.
This is really helpful. It's like you're giving me a secret decoder ring for the ambassador interview.
Think of it as a framework for crafting compelling and cohesive answers. By connecting the dots between the individual questions and the broader themes, you're demonstrating a deeper understanding of the role and showcasing your readiness to excel as an ambassador.
Okay, so I need to be thinking about the big picture, not just the individual puzzle pieces. What other themes should I be weaving into my answers?
We've talked about communication and analysis, but relationship building is another crucial skill that should be front and center in your responses.
Right, because diplomacy is all about building and maintaining relationships, right?
Exactly. So when you're discussing your approach to building relationships with foreign governments and stakeholders, don't just talk about being charming and likable.
What else should I highlight?
Emphasize your strategic thinking and your ability to identify key players and understand their motivations. Talk about your experience navigating different cultural norms and your commitment to building trust and rapport.
Okay, so it's about showing that you can be both personable and strategic in your relationship building efforts.
Precisely. And don't forget to weave in examples from your own experience to make your answers more concrete and memorable.
I'm starting to feel like I'm getting the hang of this. What other themes should I keep in mind?
Conflict resolution is another important theme that you can connect to multiple interview questions.
Right, because disagreements are inevitable in international relations, and an ambassador needs to be skilled at navigating those choppy waters.
Exactly. So when you're discussing how you handle disagreements or conflicts, don't just focus on your negotiation skills.
What else should I emphasize?
Highlight your ability to listen actively, empathize with different perspectives, and find creative solutions that address the underlying interests of all parties involved.
So it's about being a peacemaker, a bridge builder, someone who can find common ground even in the midst of disagreement?
Precisely. And remember, a well-chosen anecdote about a time you successfully resolved a conflict can be incredibly powerful in demonstrating your competence in this area.
This is all making so much sense. I'm starting to see how those 9 interview questions are really just a starting point for a much broader conversation about the skills and qualities of an effective ambassador.
Exactly. By thinking about the themes that connect those questions, you can craft a more compelling and cohesive narrative about your qualifications and your readiness to excel in this demanding role.
Okay, so we've covered communication, analysis, relationship building, and conflict resolution. What other themes should I be keeping in mind as I prepare my answers?
Cultural sensitivity is another essential theme that should be woven throughout your responses.
Right, because ambassadors are constantly interacting with people from different cultures, and it's crucial to be respectful and understanding of those differences.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about your experiences, whether it's studying abroad, working on a multicultural team, or even just traveling to different countries, highlight your ability to adapt to different cultural norms, communicate effectively across cultures, and build relationships with people from diverse backgrounds.
It's about showing that you can be a cultural chameleon, able to blend in and connect with people from all walks of life.
More like a cultural bridge builder,
Yeah.
someone who can appreciate and respect different perspectives while finding common ground and building understanding.
Like that analogy. Okay, cultural sensitivity, check. What other themes are crucial for this interview?
Ethical decision-making is another important theme that should be evident in your answers.
Right, because ambassadors often face complex situations where they need to make tough choices that could have significant consequences.
Exactly. So when you're discussing your experiences, whether it's a challenging work project, a volunteer opportunity, or even a personal dilemma, highlight your ability to think critically, consider different perspectives, and make decisions that align with your values and principles.
So it's about showing that I have a strong moral compass and that I can be trusted to make difficult decisions in a way that reflects my integrity.
Precisely. And a well-chosen anecdote about a time you faced an ethical dilemma and made a difficult but principled decision can be incredibly powerful in demonstrating your character and your commitment to ethical leadership.
This is also helpful. It's like you're giving me a roadmap for navigating the entire interview.
Think of it as a framework for crafting compelling and cohesive answers.
Okay, so we've covered communication, analysis, relationship building, conflict resolution, cultural sensitivity, and ethical decision-making. Is there anything else I should be thinking about?
One final theme that should be woven throughout your responses is adaptability.
Because the world is constantly changing, and ambassadors need to be able to roll with the punches and adjust to new situations.
Exactly. So when you're discussing your experiences, highlight your ability to learn quickly, adapt to new environments, and handle unexpected challenges with grace and resilience.
It's about showing that I can be a quick study, a problem solver, and someone who thrives in the face of uncertainty.
Precisely. And don't forget to provide specific examples from your life that demonstrate your adaptability in action.
This is all so incredibly helpful. I'm feeling much more confident about this interview. Is there anything else I should be keeping in mind as I prepare my answers?
Remember, it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
So good communication skills are key.
Absolutely. Practice speaking clearly and concisely. Make eye contact, use confident body language, and be enthusiastic and engaging in your delivery.
It's like giving a diplomatic presentation, right? I need to be polished and professional, but also relatable and authentic.
Exactly. And don't forget to listen carefully to the interviewer's questions and tailor your responses accordingly.
Yeah, it's a conversation, not just a monologue. I need to be actively engaged and responsive to what they're asking.
Precisely. And remember, the best way to prepare for an interview is to practice, practice, practice.
I'm ready to get to work. This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of ambassador interviews. I feel like I've gained a whole new level of understanding and insight.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, preparation's key, and the more you practice, the more confident you'll feel on the day of the interview.
Absolutely. I'm going to spend some quality time with RoleCatcher's resources, practice my answers, and make sure I'm ready to showcase my best diplomatic self. But speaking of RoleCatcher, I'm curious about how their AI can actually help me tailor my answers and get personalized feedback.
That's a great question, and it's one of the things that sets RoleCatcher apart. Their AI isn't just about matching keywords. It's about understanding the nuances of different job roles and providing tailored advice.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about how RoleCatcher's AI can help me tailor my answers and get personalized feedback. Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about how RoleCatcher's AI can help me tailor my answers and get personalized feedback.
It's like, imagine having all these experienced diplomats, whispering in your ear, giving you tips on what to focus on based on the embassy or the specific role you're going for. That's what RoleCatcher's AI does.
Wow, that's amazing. But how does it actually work?
Let's say you're applying to an embassy in a country that has, like, a very specific cultural protocol. RoleCatcher's AI can Look at that job description, figure out those cultural nuances, and then suggest how you can highlight your cultural sensitivity and adaptability in your answers.
So it's not just general advice, it's really tailored to the job I want.
Exactly. And it gets even more specific. It can analyze your practice answers, see what could be better, and even suggest different ways to phrase things or different examples to make your answers stronger.
So it's a speech coach who's also a, international relations expert.
That's a good way to put it. It's a secret weapon to help you refine how you communicate and present yourself as the perfect candidate for that job.
Okay, I'm convinced. RoleCatcher's AI sounds super valuable. But I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about connecting those interview questions to bigger themes. I'm still not totally clear on how to do that well.
It's about really understanding what they're trying to figure out with each question. For example, when they ask about your experience handling conflicts, they don't just want a story about a time you disagreed with someone. It's deeper than that. They want to see how you handle those complicated situations, how you can see things from different sides, and find solutions that are good for your country, but also keep those relationships positive.
So it's about showing those high-level diplomatic skills.
Right. And you can do that by weaving those skills into your answers to lots of different questions. Like when they ask how you stay up to date on what's happening in the world, you can talk about how you don't just follow the news, but you also look for different opinions and try to understand events from different angles.
So I'm not just passively reading, I'm actively thinking about all the complex stuff going on.
Exactly. And when they ask about building relationships with foreign governments, you can highlight how you find common ground, how you build trust, how you make things work together, even when there's disagreement.
So I'm the person who can navigate those rough diplomatic waters, even when there are lots of forces pulling in different directions.
Exactly. It's all about showing them you're a skilled diplomat, a strategic thinker, and someone who can build bridges and advance your country's interests while keeping things good with other countries.
This is starting to make a lot more sense. But before we wrap up this amazing deep dive, I want to go back to something we discussed earlier, real-world experience. You mentioned internships and Model UN, but are there any other ways to get that kind of experience, outside of the typical paths?
That's a great question. It shows you're thinking strategically about how to build up your qualifications, and there are actually quite a few less conventional ways to get diplomatic experience.
Okay, tell me about these alternative routes.
Volunteering for groups that work on global issues is a fantastic way to get hands-on experience, and it shows you're committed to making a difference in the world.
So volunteering for a refugee organization or a human rights group.
Exactly. Or you could get involved with a local cultural exchange program, or even participate in citizen diplomacy initiatives. Those are all great experiences that show you're actively engaging with the world and building those cross-cultural skills.
That's a great tip. I'm definitely going to look into some of those.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering how to use the skills and experiences I already have to make myself a stronger candidate, because I haven't actually worked in a formal diplomatic setting before.
That's a common worry. But remember, diplomacy uses skills from lots of different areas.
So how do I make those connections? How do I show that my experiences, even if they seem unrelated, are actually relevant?
Think about the transferable skills you've gained in your past roles. Have you managed projects, led teams, communicated well with all sorts of people, negotiated agreements? Those are all valuable in diplomacy.
I see. So it's about reframing my experiences and highlighting the skills that could be used in an ambassador role.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to connect things from different fields. Like if you've worked in marketing, you can talk about how you learn to communicate persuasively and influence people.
So my experience with marketing campaigns could be relevant to public diplomacy and advocating for my country's interests globally.
Exactly. It's about showing your unique skills and how your different experiences have actually prepared you for this kind of career.
This is really helpful. I'm seeing my resume in a whole new light.
That's what strategic thinking is all about. And remember, RoleCatcher can help you figure out those transferable skills and make sure your resume and cover letter highlight your best qualifications.
I'm definitely going to use those resources. Okay, so we've talked about getting relevant experience, highlighting transferable skills, and giving strong answers in the interview. Is there anything else I should be doing to really stand out?
Building a good network is super important in any field, but especially diplomacy.
So it's not just what you know, but who you know.
It's not just about knowing people, but building real relationships. People who can give you advice, help you learn, and support you in your career.
Okay, so how do I start building that network? Where do I even begin?
Going to conferences and events about international relations is a great way to meet people and see what kind of careers are out there. Joining professional organizations like the American Academy of Diplomacy or the Foreign Service Association can also help you connect with people.
Those are great suggestions. But I'm a little intimidated by the idea of networking with, like, experienced diplomats. What if I feel like I don't have much to offer them?
Remember, networking is about giving and receiving. It's not just about what you can get from others, but what you can bring to the table as well.
Okay, so don't think about it like a transaction.
Exactly. Be curious. Be eager to learn from others. Be a good listener. Ask thoughtful questions and share your own perspectives and experiences. You never know what might come out of a conversation.
That's a good point. It's about making real connections, not just collecting business cards.
Precisely. And remember, even casual conversations can lead to unexpected opportunities. You might meet someone who knows about the perfect internship, or someone who can connect you with a mentor in the field.
I'm feeling more confident about this networking thing now. But before we move on, I want to go back to cultural sensitivity. We talked about it being crucial for building relationships with foreign governments and stakeholders. But how do I actually develop that sensitivity? It's got to be more than just reading about different cultures, right?
You're right. It's much deeper than just knowing facts about different cultures. It's about understanding your own biases, being open to different ways of seeing things, and changing how you communicate to fit the situation.
So being aware of my own assumptions and being willing to get out of my comfort zone.
Exactly. It's a journey, and you're always learning and growing. The more you experience different cultures, the better you'll get at understanding them.
So traveling, immersing myself in different cultures, meeting people from different backgrounds, that's all important.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about knowing the right way to act in different situations. It's about respecting differences, even when you don't fully get them.
So approaching everything with humility and a willingness to learn.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions and clear up anything you're not sure about.
That's a great reminder. I'd rather ask than accidentally do something offensive.
Exactly. And most people appreciate it when you try to understand and respect their culture.
This is really eye-opening. I'm seeing cultural sensitivity as important for life in general, not just diplomacy.
That's a great way to look at it. And it's a skill that will help you in any career, but especially this one.
Okay, so we've covered experience, networking, cultural sensitivity, and those interview answers. Anything else I should be doing to get ready for this career?
Being able to speak another language well can be a big plus in diplomacy.
That makes sense. But there are so many languages out there. Where do I even start?
Think about your interests and what you want to do. What parts of the world are you most interested in? What languages do they speak there?
So if I want to work in Latin America, I should probably learn Spanish or Portuguese.
Exactly. And don't just focus on the grammar and vocabulary. Immerse yourself in the culture that goes with the language.
So watch movies, listen to music, read books, trying to talk to native speakers.
Precisely. The more you surround yourself with the language and culture, the better you'll get at both.
I'm seeing language learning as a way to explore a whole new culture, not just a skill to check off a list.
That's a great perspective. And remember, being good at another language can open up amazing opportunities, not just in diplomacy, but everywhere.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into becoming an ambassador. We've learned so much, from what the job is really like to the skills you need, how to get experience, and how to communicate like a diplomat.
I'm glad you found it valuable.
Absolutely. But before we finish up, I want to go back to RoleCatcher one more time. We've talked about all these different things to prepare, but how can RoleCatcher help me put it all together?
RoleCatcher is like your personal headquarters for all your ambassador dreams.
Okay, I like that. Tell me more about how it can help me take all this info and actually use it.
Their AI platform can help you with a lot, like tailoring your resume and cover letter to specific jobs, practicing interview answers and getting feedback, finding internships and networking opportunities, researching potential employers, and even learning more about specific regions and cultures.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's all designed to help you navigate this complex world of diplomacy and show that you're the perfect person for that dream ambassador role.
Okay, I'm feeling much more prepared and confident about all this. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I have one last question. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just starting out on this path to becoming an ambassador?
Be bold, be curious, and don't give up. Diplomacy is a tough field, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
That's great advice.
And remember, the world needs people like you, skilled and compassionate diplomats, now more than ever. So go out there, make a difference, and leave your mark on the world.
So much great advice. I'm feeling energized, ready to start prepping. But before we wrap up this whole deep dive, one last thing. We talk about all the different parts of getting ready, but is there a way to bring it all together? Like, it's one thing to have the knowledge, the skills, but it's another to actually show you're the ideal candidate.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that's where RoleCatcher's platform is so helpful. Think of it as that central hub where all your prep comes together.
Okay, I like the sound of that. Tell me more about how RoleCatcher helps me, put all this info into action and present myself as the best possible candidate.
It all starts with RoleCatcher really understands the whole diplomatic field. Their platform has analyzed tons of ambassador job descriptions, so they know what skills, what experiences, what qualities employers are really looking for.
So they've got a handle on what makes a successful diplomat.
Precisely. And they use that knowledge to create these tools to help you showcase those qualities really effectively.
Okay, starting to get it, but give me some concrete examples. How does RoleCatcher actually help me connect the dots, so to speak?
Let's start with your resume and cover letter. RoleCatcher's AI can look at what you've got and suggest ways to make them perfect for specific jobs you're applying for.
So it's not just about keywords, it's about making sure I'm highlighting the stuff that matters most for that specific role.
Exactly. RoleCatcher's AI can even help you write those really compelling narratives, to showcase your skills and experience in a way that employers really connect with.
Wow, that's cool. But what about the actual interview? How does RoleCatcher help with that, face-to-face pressure?
Remember that huge database of interview questions we talked about?
Uh,
RoleCatcher can help you pick the ones that are most likely to come up in your interview.
so I don't have to go through all 120,000 trying to find the right ones.
Nope, the AI does it for you. And it goes even further. It can look at your practice answers, give you personalized feedback, even suggest different wording or better examples to make your answers really strong.
So like a personal interview coach who's an expert in all this.
That's it. It's like a secret weapon to help you refine how you talk and how you present yourself as the perfect person for that job.
Okay, I'm sold. RoleCatcher sounds like a must-have for anyone serious about this ambassador thing.
It's a fantastic resource. I highly recommend it.
I'll definitely check it out. And to everyone listening, don't forget to visit RoleCatcher's website for all the resources we've talked about today.
It's been great being part of this deep dive.
Thank you so much for all your insights. I'm feeling so much more prepared and honestly inspired to start this journey.
Remember, the world needs skilled diplomats, compassionate people like you, now more than ever. So go out there and make a real difference.
That's a perfect way to end this. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep learning.